Hi, second graders, it's Mrs. Kazmarek, and I wanted to do a video about watercolor techniques before we start our cake still lifes, so we can kind of get an idea of the type of watercolor paints and how we can use them in different ways. So I have my paper here, and we're going to do a couple of techniques. The first one is where you take a dry paintbrush. So my paintbrush, it was wet, but I'm using some paper towel to dry it off. So it's very dry, and my paper is dry. And these watercolor paints, as you see at your tables or in the classroom, they are liquid watercolors. So they're nice and bright and beautiful, and I've added some water to dilute them because they're very strong. And we're going to be using these on our paper and seeing what kind of effects we get. So I'm going to start with some red. I'm dipping in the red, and I'm not tapping because it's going to fly everywhere, so I'm just wiping on the sides. And over here is, I'm just going to do a dry brush with red watercolor paint. So it just gets absorbed right into the paper because the paper is dry. It's kind of like a sponge. And if you smooth it out, this is just kind of stays where it wants to stay. And you can kind of smooth it out and even it out. So here's it's kind of like a pinkish red. It's a light red because of the water in it. So there's what's called a dry brush or dry painting. Obviously, if I want to change colors, I will clean my brush off with my water here, clean, and I'm going to wipe, and then I'm going to use my paper towel to dry it off, okay? If you've let this dry and it's touching it, it's still a little wet. You can see I made a little dot there. I'm going to let it dry, so we're going to leave that for a second, and if you want it, you can paint another color right on top of here. They won't blend together. But what would happen if I did a wet and then I added some colors to it? So my paintbrush is dry still. Let's say I do another red again. I'll do it right down here. So here's another red. Okay. Fill it in. But this time I'm kind of going fast because I'm going to add a little bit of another color. So clean my brush off. Let's say I add some green. Ooh. And by adding the green, it kind of starts to blend together because my paint is still dry. Gives it a kind of a cool effect. Now this is right here, this is pretty dry, so I'm gonna dry my paintbrush off with my paper towel. Let's add green to this one to see what happens. Same idea, different look. The green and red do not blend together because the red is dry. Here, the paint was still wet, so it blended. Different looks, different effects. They all look awesome. I want you to kind of see what the differences are, okay? And we're going to be playing around today and doing some exploring with our watercolor paints to see what happens. The next one is what if I had water here? So it's called a wet on wet. So I'm just taking some water, okay? And I'm going to make a square, and my brush is not clean because I got a little bit of green there, but that's okay. Let's say I do a square of water. So I've got some water here, okay? And then I don't even have to worry about drying my brush off. Let's say I choose red again. Whoa. Where the water is, it like explodes with color. Much different effect. It's moving. You get different darks, you get lights, really cool. And all I did was touch it on there, okay? So let's let that dry, and let's do another wet on wet. So my wet brush with some water here. Okay, let's do some red again. So cool, explodes like a firework. Love it. But then I'm gonna do another color. This time I'll try some blue. Clean my brush. Wow. And it wants to blend. I can even go back, add some more red. So fun. I love how this looks. I love the colors. I love how it wants to like make some designs like fireworks. Ooh, even get some purple because red and blue make purple. So now I've got blues and reds and purples. Very, very cool look. I've got some puddles here where I did my wet on wet. And what's cool about using your paint, you can use your paintbrush as a sponge. So I'm drying my paintbrush off, and my paintbrush is very dry. I can touch anywhere that there's a puddle, and it absorbs, and I can dry it off. Touch again, it like sucks it up. That way, I'm not worrying about it dripping or moving if it's too wet. And it's okay if it drips. This is how watercolors are, but it kind of just cleans up those really big puddles. Okay? Now I'm going to show you some blending techniques that we can do with different colors. I'll do them down here. So let's say I start with some green. Okay, you can do where it fades. So you've got like a lot of paint here and you keep pulling it. It'll get lighter, 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 lighter. That's kind of like a gradient look. That's pretty cool. If you leaving this wet, let's say I try some purple. They're not touched yet, right? They got a little bit of white in there, but if I touch it, very cool. You can kind of make some cool designs with that. Let's put some blue. So as you paint next to it, you'll see they'll start to blend and move and do these cool things. So I'm just playing around, and this is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be playing around with some colors, see what happens. Now I've got these blending really pretty. When we do our cakes, we can do marbly kind of cakes. Or you can do something like this where you let the paint dry and then you can do color on top if you really want those colors to pop. Now we also added oil pastels to our cakes, and anywhere you add oil pastels, it's going to pop out. So by taking the oil pastel and you paint around it or on top of it, you're still going to see that oil pastel pop in. I did not grab an oil pastel. I don't think I have one around me, so I'm not going to worry about that. But if you did some oil pasteling, you're definitely going to see how the oil pastels will stay. As long as you press really hard, it'll stay, and then the watercolor paints will be moving and blending around. So here's some techniques that you can try. This one I think is getting pretty dry, so I'll try to do some color. This is kind of, I've let it dry a little bit. Oops, sorry about that. So let me just do real quick, dry brush. Let me add some color on top of here. Let's try some yellow. It's kind of subtle, so very cool. I've got some parts that are bright yellow, and then I've got this orange, and it's blending really nicely. So play around with some things, explore, have fun, and then when you're ready, we will take these ideas and bring it to our cake, our final cake project, and then be able to color them in all these fun techniques. All right, guys, talk to you soon. See you soon. Bye.